And we are live. Welcome back to the 2020 podcast. It has been a while. It's been actually 3 weeks, and this is probably going to be our last basketball topic conversation for a while. Football is starting to kick back up, and training camps in full swing. So we got a lot to discuss there. But today we are going to be covering the top five all time at every single position: point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, and centers. Before we get into that, though, you're going to notice that we don't have the usual co-host. Drew is out currently. Next week he will be back. So Jordan is filling in for a spot. Jordan, how are we doing today?
It's a great day. This is 70 degrees, sunny. I'm
For
loving it.
you, 70 degrees
I
maybe.
know. It feels so nice, though. It's gorgeous outside.
No, it's supposed to cool down over here. So we could just go ahead and start the top. We're going to start with point guards. Any honorable mentions that you have? And on top of the honorable mentions, do you have anyone in the point guard spot that, like, maybe one of your favorite players all time that you wish you could put in the top five, but you can never justify it actually?
In the point guard spot, no. It's pretty just plain and simple. Um, Top five. I have a few honorable mentions down the line.
Okay.
But I mean, you just one. You got Steph Curry.
So let's start with five first.
Oh, five. Okay,
Yeah.
erase that. Five. Okay, this is gonna be crazy, right?
Okay.
Tony Parker.
Okay, so when I was doing my research, I put Tony Parker in my spreadsheet, and I say spreadsheet because that's how I did everything.
Mm,
Is I put all the statistics and accolades and everything to a spreadsheet for myself to really see who really deserved to be in here.
mm,
Tony was one of those guys that he didn't score out well enough. Out of the eight guys that I had here, Tony
mm.
actually scored out the lowest for me.
Okay.
So for you personally, can justify how Tony Parker fits into the top five here?
I just don't see how that San Antonio offense wins without him.
Hmm.
The Dude, he was so shifty.
Okay.
The ability to, you know, slither through the defense and get, those looks to Manu or Boris Diaw or Tim Duncan on the low block. Um, I don't think you could have replaced a point guard and it would have worked as well as it did.
Hmm.
So that's the reason I put him at five. I think he was, a key part of that.
I'm curious to see who you have at 4-3-2-1 going forward, because I had a hard time leaving some of these guys off my list. So I'm curious, for the argument's sake of it, I won't argue yet because I want to see who you left off the list, because I have the numbers in front of me. And again, personally, for the eight guys that I have up on my list and the eight guys I have on my spreadsheet for point guards, he graded out the lowest for me personally. Um, so I'll go ahead and start off with my honorable mention, and then I'll hit my number five. My honorable mention is Gary Payton. He was one that was really, really hard to leave off my list. Obviously, we're talking about potentially the best on-ball defender of all time, not really even close. But he just very, very slightly misses the mark to my number five guy. My number five guy is Oscar Robinson.
Okay.
Now, I can hear a lot of groans and ugh from people because you don't watch some of these guys, right? You can look up highlights and some film stuff on guys from like Oscar Robinson, Magic Johnson, even looking further down the list at shooting guards, George Gervin or Clyde Drexler, even further down. So what you have to do for me personally is my eyes are going to be the number one source of how I grade these guys out. So if I've watched you guys like Steph, guys like Chris Paul, guys like Kobe or D Wade, those guys, if I've watched you, that's going to be my number one source of how I grade you out.
Right.
If I haven't watched you, that's when it comes down to the numbers. The numbers are going to be everything. And the things that I put on my numbers are going to be championships, MVPs, DPOYs, all NBA selections, all defensive selections, scoring leaders. So times you've been a scoring leader, times you've been an assist leader, rebounding leader, steals leader, blocks leader, and what your career points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, steals per game, blocks per game, and then field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. And then you have additional accolades that score into that a little bit as well. So then I have a unique point system that kind of accumulates all of it. And if it's a close point system, so let's say one guy's like a 1.05 and another guy's like a 1.0. If I think the one guy's like a 1.0 is probably a little bit better, but the one guy just scored slightly better, I'm going to put the other guy on top because of additional accolades. So for Oscar Robinson, for me personally, so looking, I mean, we're talking about the Big O. We're talking about the original triple-double machine before Russell Westbrook was the guy who got the triple-doubles. We're talking about a guy who is a one-time champ, one-time MVP. He's an 11-time All-NBA selection, which is tied for the most for the 8 guys that I picked up. He's tied for the most for All-NBA selections there. He's never been an all-defensive selection, so a little bit knock on him, but he's been a 6-time assist leader, 25.7 points per game, which is the most points per game out of all of the 8 guys that I selected. 9.5 assists per game, which is the third most out of the guys I selected. 7-point rebounds per game, most out of the guys I selected. 1.1 steals per game, 0.1 blocks per game, 48.5 field goal percentage, and then no 3-point percentage wasn't recorded at that time, and those guys aren't shooting threes anyway. So I put him at my number 5. Some guys have him a lot higher, but again, some of the guys that I have ahead of him, like my number 4, my number 1 guy, I've watched those guys play, and I'm not going to justify someone I've never seen before and grades out lower than those guys, putting him into any higher than the number 5 spot. So number 4 for you?
John Stockton.
Okay, I have John Stockton a little bit higher. John Stockton is my 3, so go ahead and talk about John.
I think it's hard to discredit the all-time assist leader and steals leader. 11 NBA All Selections, 10 All Stars, 5 all defensive second teams.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they didn't, take it this far to win a chip, but his records will not be touched. I don't think anybody's getting that assists or steals record.
Yep.
And for who he's playing with, I'm not saying his name.
No, we don't say him around here.
No, we don't speak about that guy. He was just the court vision was incredible, and how humble he was, pulling up to his games in a minivan and everything.
He was soccer momming it.
Dude, he was. But yeah, so I got John Stockton at 4. John Stockton was arguably the best playmaker we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think when old heads think about point guards, I think John Stockton is the guy they think about, that type of player.
He's the poster child.
Yeah, so I don't. He's like the most pure point guard that you can think of, like off the top of the head. You hit all the points essentially for my guy at the number 3 spot. Again, that's John Stockton. But I do think it's hard to discredit him. I have him a little bit higher than my number 4 guy. My number 3 and number 4 are really close, but my number 4 guy, same thing. No champions, no championships. But he's not the all-time assist leader, and he's not the all-time steal leader. He's a future Hall of Famer, but he's not a Hall of Famer quite yet. My number 4 guy, and some people are gonna laugh, but my number 4 guy is Chris Paul. Some guys can't stand Chris Paul, and I get it. Chris Paul's kind of an asshole. He's hard to watch sometimes because he's a dick to people. You can look up highlights of him just being a dick throughout his entire career, and that's just the guy he is. He's probably not the best locker room presence, but we are still talking about a guy who he's an all-time point guard to me. He's my number 4 guy. So all-time, we're talking about 11 All-NBA selections, 9 all-defensive selections. He's a 5-time assist leader for the league. He's a 6-time steals leader. 17.5 points per game, 9.4 assists per game, 0.2 rebounds, 2.1 steals, 0.2 blocks, 47.1 field goal percentage, and 36.9 3-point percentage. And again, pretty much de facto Going to be a future Hall of Famer. The guy's never going to win a chip. I mean, he just signed with San Antonio. He's at the tail end of his career. He's not going to win one. He's not really looking for it at this point. But for me, the little bit of like childhood nostalgia, looking through the little bit tinted lenses a little bit, because I really got super into the NBA when it was like Lob City. Like, that was watching those type of things, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, and Chris Paul. Like, that was the cool thing to watch for me. So a little bit of nostalgia there, kind of playing a factor into it, of him making it into my top 5. But when you still watch him score out on my list, he still scores out. Just for reference, the highest guy scoring out on my grading system, and I know it's hard to talk about a grading system when not fully explaining it, a 1.41 is the highest grade. A 1.0 is the next highest. Chris Paul graded at a 0.82, which is the third highest, but I couldn't justify putting him above John Stockton. So John Stockton rated a little bit lower than Chris Paul. But again, I'm not going to put Chris Paul, who also has no championships. But the difference is John Stockton didn't win championships because of Michael Jordan. It's a little bit different. So, when you're blowing 3-1 leads as Chris Paul and, the Clippers, it's hard to justify your lack of playoff success to put you at the 3 spot. So I had to knock him down to the 4 spot instead. So I already technically went over my 3. We already technically went over it with the John Stockton thing. Who's your number 3?
Maybe a little controversial. I gotta throw Isaiah Thomas in there. Not Boston Celtics. We're talking Detroit.
See, if it was Boston, if it was Boston Isaiah Thomas, I'd be on board with you.
No, man.
I'm interested to hear this, because you have 2 guys on your list now that I could not justify throwing on at all. Like, the 2 lowest graders for me personally. So I kind of want to hear what you have to say, because, again, personally, these guys didn't even get close to sniffing this list for me.
I know. I see his achievements. I see his achievements, and I found those, and it's Finals MVP, 12-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. He's got 2 chips. He's averaging 19.2 with 9.3 assists a game and almost 2 steals a game. 2 chips in the 89-90s with the Lakers. The Celtics being there.
Yeah.
He scored 25 points in 1 quarter in the finals.
Yeah.
That's actually crazy. I think people discredit him because of the whole Michael Jordan documentary that came out.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan trying to big dog him and little boy him and all this other stuff. But I think Isaiah Thomas was a dog.
I can't. It's hard for me to justify it. The 2 championships obviously hit a huge curve for a lot of people. And so him being your 3, I can kind of understand with the championships being involved. But there's guys on here who've won MVPs while he hasn't. He has no depoys. Only 5.
No, we're not talking about Steve Nash.
No, he has. Nah, we ain't. Spoiler alert, fuck Steve Nash. We ain't doing all that. Nah, he don't deserve his MVPs. We're not even doing all that. I would have put, if he was on my list, I would have put 2 and then an asterisk next to it, because that's just crazy. He only has 5 All-NBA selections, which is the second lowest, only to Tony Parker when it comes to All-NBA selections. All these other guys, Steph, Magic, Chris, Oscar, John Stockton, Gary Payton, all have more All-NBA selections. He has no All-Defense selections. He's never been a scoring leader. He's only been an assist leader 1 time compared to some of the other guys who have 9, 6, and 5 times in their careers. He's never been a steals leader. Some of the other guys have 6, 2, 1 times, 2 times, 1 times. 19.2 points per game, which is on the higher end. That will rank 4th for me on the guys that did pull up. 9.3 assists per game. That is going to rank pretty high as well. That's going to put him somewhere around the 4th or 5th spot. Rebounds per game, I'm not going to put a huge curve on it, but it's going to put him about middle of the pack. Steals per game, it's going to put him about tied for 3rd. Field goal percentage, 45.2, which is going to be the lowest out of all the guys that I put on here. 47.3%, 52%, 47.1, 48.5. So, I mean, He's on the lower end of the spectrum. He has the lowest field goal percentage for his career, and in the 3-point percentage as well. He's on the lowest tier for the 3-point percentage. So he's in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame point guard. But for me personally, I can't justify putting it inside of my top 5. Again, he's the second lowest grader, only to Tony Parker, for my list. And when you watch him, I don't want to take anything away from him, but it's not spectacular. I'm not amazed. I'm not blown away. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Like, are you kidding me? Have you seen the guy on TikTok where he's like watching, Isaiah Thomas highlights until I get impressed, and then he'll sit there and watch it for a while. And he's like, nah,
like a minute or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I feel watching his highlights. Until I get impressed. I can get through a 6-minute video and be like, I don't know if I was impressed to stop the video quite that much. So I get it. I respect it. We already went over John Stockton at my 3, so I'm not going to have to go and rebring all that stuff up again.
Yep.
Go ahead, and what's your 2? Because the 2s and the 1s are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we did the exact same numbers 1 and 2, but I did Magic Johnson.
Okay, so Magic's also my 2. Steph is my 1, so Steph is also your 1. Okay.
Yes.
And this is going to be controversial for some people. Old heads are not going to like that at all.
Sorry, old heads.
They're
apologize.
going to be very, very, very upset. And full disclosure, Magic Johnson was my highest graded player on the point system. He was my highest graded player for point guards. But when I said at the beginning of the video, is my eyes do the talking for me. That's the highest graded system. And when I watch Steph, 2016 Steph is the scariest player maybe outside of 2018 LeBron, 2013 LeBron. Like, he's one of the most dominant, scary players of all time. It's like, dude, you throw up your hands, you go, what do you do? It's like LeBron driving into the paint and you can't stop a freight train.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Steph shooting the 3 back in 16, 17, 18. You can't stop the dude. Obviously, you can't stop him now, but like in that 3-year stretch, it was almost impossible to stop him. So
first
that's
unanimous
my
ever
justification.
MVP.
Yeah. So go ahead and rattle off Magic and Steph.
Okay, so I mean, excuse me. Obviously, Magic, 6'9" as a point guard in the 80s and 90s is crazy.
Ahead of his time.
And way ahead of his time.
Yep.
19 and a half, 11.2 assists, 7 rebounds. Obviously, it could have been more. 2 steals a game, 3 Finals MVPs, 3 MVPs, 10 All NBAs, 4-time assist leader.
Yep.
2-time steal leader, 5 chips.
Yep.
Obviously playing on one of the top teams to ever be assembled. You had Kareem, you had Nick Van Exel, and all those other guys, and even played center there in one of the finals, which is very impressive.
He won a chip as a rookie, right?
Yeah,
and he won Finals MVP as a rookie.
Yeah, so that's special.
What was he putting up in some of his finals games? 40, 17, and 9 or something insane.
Yeah,
it's a nutcase.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is. But
it's hard to justify it.
But when I compare him to my glorious king, points per game, he got 24.6, 6.5 assists, almost 5 rebounds, 1.6 steals, 9 All-Stars, 9 All-NBAs, 2 scoring leaders, 1 steal leader, only 1 Finals MVP. He got robbed.
Yep.
But when you look at the influence of the game, there's nobody higher.
Nobody's more influential than Steph Curry at influencing the game today.
Nobody's higher.
Absolutely not.
Unfortunately, he can walk around London and not be noticed, which is kind of shitty. Did I cut out?
Right. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
But no, so I think it's hard to take away from what he's did because as you said, 2016 Steph. Even you look at 2022 Curry. He told 2 of the Boston Celtics. He said, "Hey, enjoy your last win."
Yep.
And they won 3 straight. So they're those Cavalier Warrior days of the finals, straight back to back to back. Those are probably some of the best, if not the best, finals we've ever seen and will ever see. Obviously, those 2 guys are coming to a close on their career, but I don't know. It's hard to knock him with
the 2 spot. I get
He's
it.
got the threes record. He's got 4 chips. And what he did for the Warriors franchise. I mean, you obviously I think about it quite often. The Timberwolves fucked up that bad.
Mm-hmm.
They had the 5 and the 6 pick or
Yep.
whatever it was, and they picked Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn.
Yep. I totally understand it. Now looking at it from the other side, arguing from the other perspective, and I have the same ranking as you, right? Magic 2, Steph 1. My eyes do all the talking for me. For all the old heads, I'll argue for you for a minute. When looking at the 8 guys that I have listed out here, once again, the 8 guys are Steph, Magic, Chris Paul, Oscar Robinson, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, Tony Parker, and Gary Payton are the guys I selected. Magic Johnson has the most championships with 5. He has the most MVPs with 3. He has 10 All-NBA selections, with which ties for second with Steph. No All-Defensive selections, same as Steph. He's never been a scoring leader. Steph has 2. He's a 4-time assist leader, and then Steph has 0. Never been a rebounding leader. None of the guys on the point guard list are going to be rebounding leaders. He's been a 2-time steals leader, with Steph being 1. And when it comes to points per game, he ranks 3rd among the guys at 19.5, compared to Steph being 2nd at 24.8. Oscar Robinson leads the pack at 25.7. Assist per game is going to be 11.2. That's the all-time assist per game record for a career, is 11.2. Steph is 6.4. Rebounds per game is 7.2. Leads the pack once again. Steph is 4.7. Steals per game is 1.9. Leads is 3rd in that category, with Steph being 1.5. Blocks per game is 0.4, Steph being 2nd on that list, and Magic being number 1. Field goal percentage, Magic being ahead of the pack, 52% field goal percentage, and then 3-point percentage is 30.3. So looking at the scoring metric, Magic scored out at a 1.4, while Steph graded out at a 1.0. My eyes did the making up for the other 0.41 in my eyes. Steph being super duper influential to the game changing player from the time he was drafted, after his whole ankle injuries and his tendencies to not be on the court because of that. Once it really got into full swing, he never really stopped. And we're talking about the most threes all time, most threes in a season. He's a future Hall of Famer. And again, he has the argument for most influential player all time and greatest point guard of all time. So for you and I, and for a lot of people probably around our age, it's going to be Steph 1. I know that, we were playing 2K one day and Joe was trying to argue about Magic versus Steph, and he thought Magic was the one. That's the consensus, but Steph definitely has the argument to be there. I'm glad we're on the same page. I figured you would be. Jordan's a Warriors fan, so I figured we'd be on the same page with that one. But I at least wanted to make the argument for the other side.
Play the devil's advocate.
The only player I wish I could put inside my top 5 is one of my favorite point guards, my favorite point guard of all time, and I can never ever justify it.
Derrick Rose.
Rajon Rondo.
Oh.
As I love Rondo. He's my favorite player. He's the guy that got me into basketball. I mean, we're talking about, I got into basketball when the Celtics were Rajon, Avery Bradley, Jared Sullinger, guys who are not good at all. We're out of the league a couple of years later. So I wish I could put Rondo in there because he's the guy that got me into basketball. But I would never, ever, ever be able to justify it. Moving on to the shooting guards. The shooting guards, I think, are also another one of those categories that's not super interesting. I think we both knew who our 1s and 2s were going to be. Pretty definite. But I think that's when the interesting conversation comes into play at 3, 4, 5, and the honorable mentions. So starting off with the honorable mentions, or guys you wish you could put in the top 5, but you can never justify it. Who do you have in there as your honorable mentions, if you have anybody?
No, I do have one.
Okay.
Klay Thompson.
Okay. He's a guy that you wish you could put in, or you guy?
No, he's just an honorable mention. I couldn't justify him putting it 5 with some of these other players that I have on here. But to be honest, they don't win 4 without him. Yeah. I mean, they put that team together so well and constructed it to where it wasn't just Steph. You had to watch out for Klay as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, 60 in a game, 35 in a quarter without
Yep.
missing a shot is an incredible feat. Um, it's just hard um, from the other shooting guards that have played. But yeah, no, I couldn't justify putting him at five.
Yep. No, I get it. Um, I have two honorable mentions. I have George Gervin and Clyde Drexler. I couldn't justify putting those guys on. Um, Gervin and Clyde ranked out decently on my list, but I just personally couldn't put them above some of the guys. Shooting guard position is a really talented position in the NBA, and we're talking about from the beginning of the NBA to where we are today. The shooting guard position is still the premier scoring, premier option position.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you have a lot of other guys who are going to be premier options at small forward, power forward, center, point guard, wherever. But shooting guard is still expected to come off and score somewhere between that 13 to anywhere to 33 points per game,
Yeah.
depending on who you are. I just couldn't put George Gervin or Clyde Drexler in. Full disclosure, I'm going to mention it once again because I'm cutting these up into clips. Mention it once again on if you can't watch the guys because your eyes do all the talking for you. That is the number one way to rank people is your eyes. If you can't watch them or you haven't watched a lot of them, you haven't watched them live, you can only look up highlights and whatnot. The accolades are going to be the next best thing. I put them all into a spreadsheet. I calculate it out. I put a points per system onto it, and that's how I calculate out some of these guys that are on my list, but I really haven't watched them all that often. So guys like George Gervin and Clyde Drexler, they're on my honorable mentions. Can't justify putting them into the top five, but they scored out lower than all the other guys from 1 to 5. Some guys might have an issue with how I ordered the 5, or maybe even my number 5 spot. But I don't think there's going to be a huge argument past the number 4 on. It's just maybe how it's ordered. So looking at your number 5, who do you have?
Man, that one's it's a toss up. Honestly, for me, it's between James Harden
Okay.
or I got another crazy one right here. This
Okay.
Manu.
Okay. That is crazy.
I told you it's crazy. I think, but okay. So the only argument I have against James is the lack of MVPs. Granted, it was a very hard time to get MVPs in the years that he's excelling.
Well, James has one.
He has right. We're right. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. I mean, he played in Steph's peak, LeBron's
Yep. Katie's
one
peak
of many
and
peaks, KD's
yeah.
peak. It was very difficult for him to get there, and then the obvious lack of championships. Um,
Yeah, that's big.
with how many teams that he's decided to jump ship to. And then when it was 2016, 2017 James Harden Rockets, James Harden, oh my gosh, dude, 30 something points a game.
Mm-hmm.
He was borderline unstoppable, and you had Ricky Rubio guarding him with the hands behind his back.
Right.
Did nothing. And then Manu on the other side, with that Spurs team, 4 titles, 3 third team selections, 2 All-Stars, 1 6-man.
Yeah.
He was just glorified role player.
Yeah.
That's how I look at Manu, and I think he fit their system just like a little bit of Klay Thompson. But I think Manu was slept on. Yeah, I think he still is slept on by a lot of people. I'm not discrediting, what you're going to say. But I think he was very crafty. He was very crafty with the ball in his hands.
I get it. I can never put my top 5 a glorified 6-man. I can't do it. I'm not putting Jamal Crawford in my top 5, so I'm not going to put Manu in my top 5.
That's all right.
James does have the MVP. He's my number 5.
Okay.
So he does have the MVP. He has 7 All-NBA selections. He's a 3-time scoring leader. He's a 2-time assist leader. He's at 24 points per game, 7.1 assists per game, which leads all of the shooting guards that I have. 5.6 rebounds per game, 1.5 steals, 0.6 blocks. and 44.1 field goal percentage and a 36.4 3-point percentage. So he scored out at fifth. There was no eyeball test shifting guys around. Ooh, maybe I have to move guys here and there. He graded out fifth. The guys below him they weren't close. Other guys I had on my list, Clyde Drexler, Reggie Miller, George Gervin, Ray Allen, those guys aren't in my top five. They just weren't even close to grading out anywhere close to James Harden. It was not close to accolade wise. He actually graded out a little bit higher than fifth. He graded out actually closer to fourth. One guy graded out actually at fifth, but I put him way higher than fifth because he doesn't deserve that. Because my eyeballs tell me a different story. So James is my fifth. So you have a toss-up between James and Manu at your fifth, which, I get it. But for me, again, I can't put a glorified six man. James was that six man. He grew out of that six man, and he grew into a leader of the team. I understand the hate for James Harden. James Harden was my favorite shooting guard in the league when he was with the Rockets. And that's around the era I'm super young and super into really getting into basketball. A couple years before that, I started to get into it and learn it a little bit, and full swing once James is on the Rockets and he's doing what he's doing. So to me, he's one of the most unstoppable presence in one time period. He was left-handed shooter, and the step back is still controversial to this day. It's the James Harden step back. The way that he changed the game, getting to the line, for better or for worse, he changed the game for how much he was getting to the line. I mean, he was the original free throw merchant before you had Joel Embiid shooting 1.5 million a game, and Luka shooting 1.5 million a game, and SGA shooting 1.5 million a game. So before all those guys,
we do
watched
tolerate
James
the
Harden.
slander.
Huh?
We tolerate the slander.
Exactly. So before, those guys watched James Harden. They were in high school watching this guy. They were, younger. They were in middle school watching this guy because these guys are younger than me. Mm-hmm. So they were in middle school watching these guys play the game. And that's what they grew up seeing. And so that's what they mimicked their game after. And so that's what they're doing right now. So for me, he is influential. Again, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, he is influencing the NBA for what it is right now. So for me, he's the de facto five. I know all the controversy surrounding him and, the forcing his way out of places. And we're going to talk about forcing your way out of places and being an asshole and being a bad teammate when we get to the small forward position. Because I'm going to bring up some names that people are not going to be happy about. But for me, James is my five. For you, your four, who is it?
We honestly possibly could have the same 4-1.
Okay. We probably have the same players. We might not have the same order.
I put Allen Iverson.
Okay, we don't have the same order.
You have him higher.
I do have AI higher.
Interesting. Okay. It's the same. 1 MVP, 7 in All NBAs, 11 All Stars. I think AI is up there with Steph as one of the most influential players to play this game.
Yep.
It's a signature cross on Jordan. Double cross, you never forget it. Yep. He ranks 14th in steals, 28th in scoring. Really just a bucket. If you really think about it. With how small he was, 6 foot, 6'1", 6 foot. He's just a bucket for that Sixers team. I think he was a blessing for them. But that's
who's your three? Because our 4 and our 3 are probably the same person, and we can make the argument because I probably have them flipped. Who's your 3?
Dwayne.
Okay, so I have them flipped. I have Dwayne Wade at 4, Allen Iverson at 3. So there does come a time where my eyes can't do all the talking and they can't make up ground that much.
Yeah.
So on my scoring, personally, I have AI rated out at a 0.76. For context, MJ is my highest at 1.94. Surprise, surprise. Okay. But D-Wade is a 0.35 and AI is a 0.76. So I couldn't make up that much ground for me personally watching him. And Dwayne Wade actually scored out lower for accolades than James Harden did. But I'm not putting Dwayne Wade below James Harden at an all-time clip. So for me personally, looking at it, D Wade has those 3 chips, and I get it. That is going to be the thing that is going to curve most people's lists. And when you look at him, yeah, that could probably sway the list a little bit further to give him more points, to get him closer to that 0.7, 0.75, closer to what AI is for me. But I mean, you still played with a Shaq that was still very mobile and still could play a very, very, very prominent role. And you also played with LeBron James and Chris Bosh. I don't want to discredit you that much, but I'm gonna discredit you a little bit. Because you played with guys who were constantly, and you weren't the one option. You weren't the number one option on 2 of your championships. So AI has an MVP. D-Wade does not. 7 All-NBA selections compared to D-Wade's 8, so he has that above him. D-Wade does have 3 All-Defense selections. AI doesn't have that. AI's been a 4-time scoring leader, though, while D-Wade's been a 1-time scoring leader. None of them have been assist leader or rebounds leader, so they haven't done that. Steals leader 3 times for AI compared to D-Wade's 0, which is kind of surprising considered he's never gotten any all defensive selections, but he's been a steals leader 3 times. So it's a little bit of a broken system. Appreciate that, NBA. No one's ever been a block leader, even though considering Dwayne Wade's probably the best shot blocking guard of all time. No one's been a blocks leader. But we're looking at 26.7 points per game compared to D-Wade's 22, 6.2 assists per game compared to D-Wade's 5.4, 3.7 rebounds compared to D-Wade's 4.7. So D-Wade does have that above him, but 2.2 steals per game compared to D-Wade's 1.5. Blocks per game, D-Wade 0.8, one of the best shot blocking guards of all time.
I have it here. It says as the category 6'4" and below, he has the most blocks.
Okay. See, and yeah. Field goal percentage, D-Wade has that above him, but 3-point percentage, Allen Iverson hasn't beat out. So, I think it's really, really close. And again, I think the championships are going to sway people to give D-Wade the push like you. And I totally understand it. I do think when it comes to the influential things on and off the court, AI is, he's Kyrie before Kyrie.
Yeah.
And we're talking about cornrows. We're talking about the shooting arms,
the headbands.
We're talking about headbands. We're talking about the off the court, how he dresses, like
practice.
All of that. All his interviews. Like we're talking about one of the most influential dudes on culture of all time, on basketball culture. There isn't a more influential dude of all time. So I'm going to give Allen Iverson the push because again, he does grade out higher for me. Just by a little bit, but I can't make that up with what Dwayne Wade has done. I respect him and I love him, and watching him was incredible. But I just can't. I can't put that in there and rank him a little bit higher. So again, James is my 5, Dwayne Wade's my 4, Allen Iverson is my 3. For you, Jordan, you said you have kind of a mix between James and Manu at your 5, and then you have AI at 4, and then D Wade at 3. Our 2 and our 1, once again, surprise, surprise. If you look at our point guard video, same thing. We're going to have the same ranking in the same order. Number 2 and number 1. You can go and read both of them off the same time.
We got the Black Mamba, rest in peace. And then Michael Jordan. The more and more, as an NBA season comes and goes, I appreciate what Kobe did as he passed. I didn't appreciate it. I have my dad. He's like, "Oh, I hate the Lakers," and I had Kobe Bryant, blah blah blah, whatever.
Right.
But as a basketball fan, Kobe Bryant is, I would, obvious top 10 all time for me.
Oh yeah.
In all categories.
Yep.
Obviously, the 5 titles, 2 finals MVPs, 1 regular season. Should be 2 MVPs.
Should be. Should be 2
fuck
very
you, Steve
comfortable
Nash.
MVPs.
Fuck you, Steve Nash.
Yep.
11 all NBA first team, 18 all stars, 9 all defensive first team selections.
Yep. 12 overall.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
4th in scoring. 16th in steals, which, if you look at AI was 14th in steals, so he's right there on AI.
Yep.
And I just think, as much as people give it to him, hey, he doesn't pass the ball, he made shots. He was a shot maker. and a
Yep.
ball stopper. He was the pressure that you put on your best player.
Yep. Absolutely. He wanted to
Um,
guard the best player every single night, night in,
he
night out,
Dude, he wanted it.
without fail.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy. I still see that clip of Steph's first year walking past half court. Kobe's on his hip already.
Yep.
He falls to the ground. Steph had to literally push him off just to get a shot off.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that. Yeah, I wish Kobe was still playing,
Yeah.
but
No,
yeah.
absolutely. And it's one of those things as Kobe would be the greatest shooting guard of all time if it wasn't for a guy that played in the 80s and 90s, and the most recognizable name of all time in Michael Jordan.
Yep.
And Kobe does put up a decent rap sheet against him. He tries his best. 5 championships to Jordan's 6. He only has 1 MVP, should be 2. We both agree on that. MJ has 5, though. Kobe doesn't have a depoy. Michael Jordan has a fake pseudo depoy that should never count because the stat sheet guy goes ahead and writes it all down. And all you old heads in the comments, I see you guys on Instagram comments, I see you guys on YouTube comments, I see you guys on TikTok. Everybody does that. Every stat corrector does that. No, they don't. Shut the fuck up.
Find one
you
more,
motherfuckers
please.
are just trying to like get off his meat, bro. Like we get it.
Find
Cool.
one more.
Bro, like they, whatever, man. Like they
Honestly,
try to bring up some stuff from like Jaren Jackson Jr. that it happened like a couple of years ago, but all that stuff was already proven fake. Like that stuff is not real. Like all that stuff, not real. You guys are fucking bringing it up just to bring it up. It doesn't exist. Stop like telling stories in your head. This isn't a kid's story.
I'm gonna say it right here live on the record while I was recording. LeBron James is more and more every day becoming my GOAT.
Yep, absolutely.
It's not even just basketball at this point. It's the things that LeBron has done. The picture alone of him holding the American flag. Michael Jordan ain't ever done that.
Yeah.
And it's just at 40 years old,
Yep.
he was selected to represent the U.S. of A. while Michael Jordan was gambling his life away at 40 years old. I'm not taking away from Michael. 5 MVPs, 10 All-NBA first teams, 14 All-Stars. He has the accolades. But when I look at it, the argument becomes clearer that, LeBron should be there. But anyways, I think Michael was obviously great player. But I think he was heavily assisted by his top defender in Scottie Pippen and
don't
one
worry,
of the greatest rebounders of all time in Dennis Rodman.
Oh, don't worry, Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, they don't make my list, but they both make my honorable mentions on my small forwards and power forwards. So
absolutely.
Yeah. You know who's not on my point guards, and you know who's not on my power forwards, and
Steve Kerr.
So I don't have Kyrie in my top 5 or my honorable mentions. I don't have Kevin Love or Chris Bosh in my power forwards. D Wade's the only other guy. So, anyways, but we can go ahead and shut it there again. Just to re-go over it, he has a mix of James / Manu getting some respect at 5. I have James at 5. D Wade for me is at 4, while Allen Iverson is at his 4. D Wade's at my Allen Iverson's at my 3, while D Wade's at his 3, and then we have Kobe and MJ at 2 and 1, and that's probably not going to change for a very, very, very long time. Moving on to the small forward selection, this is one that I think we have the same. No, surprise, we got another same 1 and 2 most likely. But when looking at the 3, 4, 5 and honorable mentions, we might have something different here. I think this is where it gets a little bit more exciting, because I think I might have a couple guys in my top 5 that some people wouldn't actually put in there at all, and some people are going to be pretty upset. And I think the same thing, we're going to look at I have some stuff in my power forwards and my centers that people are not going to be happy about. But looking at the small forwards alone, once again, clipping up these videos, you can go watch the full podcast episode. If you just click on the blue logo, blue video on our page, click on it. It's the full podcast episode. Listen to it while you're working. But if you're just listening to the clip, once again, the best way to judge all these things is with your eyes. That is my number one judgment, is my eyes. If I've watched you guys, then I'm going to rank you a little bit higher. The other way is accolades. In a points-based system, I put a bunch of guys. Specifically, I put 8 guys for the small forward position into a spreadsheet. I put championships, MVPs, DPOYs, all NBA selections, all defensive, a whole bunch of other stuff. Put them in a points-based system, put all the accolades into there, and then it spits out a number for me. And whatever that number is, gets you your ranking. Unless, again, I've watched you play or you have additional accolades and records that give you a little bit more bump up to you. So give you an example, one guy at my number 2 does not grade out at my number 2, but he has additional accolades that give him that number 2 spot, like very, very definitely. So looking at honorable mentions first, Jordan, do you have any honorable mentions for your small forward positions?
Yeah, I got a few.
Okay.
Carmelo was one
Okay.
for me. Paul Pierce is another one. Sorry, he's not my top 5.
No, fuck that. Paul
Um,
Pierce. No, hold on. No, let me back it up. I'm a Celtics fan. Okay. And I looked at just if you go watch our other videos that we're having up on our YouTube channel, okay? I did in my spreadsheet, I did 8 point guards, I did 9 shooting guards, I did 8 small forwards, 8 power forwards, and 9 centers. Paul Pierce was my lowest graded player out of any of those
oh
guys.
shit.
Any of them. He doesn't snit. I'm a Celtics fan. I can't stand Paul Pierce. He's
All
my
right,
lowest
cool.
graded player out of any of my guys that I have on here. He
Yeah.
doesn't even sniff the list. He shouldn't have been even on here. I wasted my time putting my accolades in there. Stupid. Go ahead.
All right. I mean, those two really stick out for me.
Yeah.
Nobody else that, unless you're on my list already, has that I've seen. I mean, I could have said Jimmy Butler or Paul George, but they haven't done shit.
Yeah, no, not enough.
Um, yeah. So I'd say those two. Obviously Paul Pierce, they won that one chip that they're gonna hang on to for the rest of their life. Um, but I think he was very, very well placed in that Boston system.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
The only honorable mention I have, and I had a hard time keeping him off the list. I wish I could have given 2 of my guys a tie between 4 and 5. I wish I could have given my 4 and 5 guys a tie, and then I wish I could have given my honorable mention guy the 5th spot, but I can't. My honorable mention is Scottie Pippen. Just misses the list, and I wanted to put him on there so bad. I mean, 6-time champ. Now, granted, you play all of those 6 years with MJ, but 7-time All NBA selection, 10-time All Defense selection, 1-time steals leader, 16.1 points per game, 5.2 assists per game, 6.4 rebounds per game, 2 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game. So he's close, and he almost made it. He didn't quite grade out exactly where I wanted. I had my 4, 5, and 5th. My 4, 5, and my honorable mention guys grade out so close that I had a hard time putting one guy over another. But again, my eyes are going to be the ultimate grader. So my 5th and my 4th place guys are guys who are still active today. Starting off with 5th, go ahead and read off your 5th.
no,
'Cause
no, no, no. I'm curious. You first. Go ahead. No. What's your 5?
my 5 is going to make people angry.
Okay.
My 5 might be people's de facto 2.
Okay.
My 5 might be your 2.
Okay.
My 5 is the absolute snake himself,
Okay.
Kevin Durant. I can't stand Kevin Durant, and the guy I have at 4 it might make people angry. Like
Okay.
some people might have respect for 3 and 2. No one's ever going to take the 1 spot, but I get it. I get it. He has 2 championships. I discount those championships so much. Like if he left for another random ass team or a piss poor team, whatever, dude. Like you won your championships, you earned them, right? Kawhi left and he got his chips. LeBron left and he got his chips. Like these guys left and they got their chips, but they did it while leading their team. Kevin Durant wasn't the best player on his team for those chips, in my opinion. I don't care if he won Finals MVP. Go fuck yourself. Like Steph
No,
was the best player.
there's an argument for that. The only reason that he won the Finals MVP is because they knew what Steph could do and had to cover him harder. That gave Kevin Durant the availability that he needed.
Yep. So, and I also have a hard time, like, okay, so going over it, MVPs, he has one, which ranks third on my list, third in all NBA selections with 11 on my list, four scoring titles, which is the most, 27.3 points per game, which is the second most, 4.4 assists per game, doesn't sniff anyone on the list, 7 rebounds per game, it's not doesn't place anywhere on the list, like in terms of my top three.
Mm-hmm.
1.1 steals per game, not on my list in top three. But blocks per game, he's at 1.1, which does rank second. And he's second also on my list when it comes to 50.1 field goal percentage. And then his 3-point percentage is 38.7. So second in those ones. So again, my fourth spot, Kevin Durant and Scottie Pippen ranked very, very close, similar with each other in different ways. I just discount those championships so much. I just can't stand it. And then you go to Brooklyn and you
Build another super team
you fail. You fail. I get it.
miserably.
Guys, you had guys that weren't healthy, but you also just couldn't lead your team. And now you're in Phoenix where once again you can't lead your team. Phoenix is one of the messiest teams in the NBA right now. Brooklyn was one of the messiest teams in the NBA a couple of years ago. Like he's consistently he quits on OKC, he goes over to Golden State, he wins with Golden State. He doesn't actually he's not the best player on that team. You have three other guys who are already winning chips without you. You join the greatest record team of all time and you leave. You can't do anything in Brooklyn and then you can't do anything in Phoenix. You just I'm sure we've all seen the clip of the one basketball podcast and the dude screaming about legendary.
Yeah.
Don't say that Kevin Durant is legendary clip. And he's right. I just can't put him any higher. I get it. He is like the greatest one-on-one scorer of all time. He is a top 5 scorer of all time. But I think I can't put you any higher than 5 when it comes to impact of the game and what you've done for your team, leadership wise. Like I can't stand the guy. And my guy at number 4, a lot of other people can't stand the guy. So some people are gonna have a problem with that one as well. So who's your 5?
All right. I mean, this one, it's kind of just, I don't even know. I didn't know who else to put. I couldn't really justify anybody with these accolades. Even though it was this time period, I put John Havlicek
Okay.
in this for the 60s. It's very wishy-washy whether you want to discredit these for it being the 60s, but 8 titles, 1 Finals MVP, 11 All-NBA, 5 All-Defensive First Team selections.
Yep.
Obviously that Celtics team with Bill Russell and all those, Havlicek and those guys, they won 11. Bill has 11 chips.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I never watched him, but I mean, I just look at his accolades and I said, how many of these can be fabricated? and
Yeah.
um, 8. Nobody talks about him that much.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I discredit it. I have one Celtic on my list for all of it.
Yeah,
For point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, centers, I have one Celtic on my list.
I know who it is.
But
But yeah, I get
it's
it.
gonna be in this video. So
Yeah, no, I know absolutely. Because he's on mine as well. I mean, looking at some of these other ones, you could have thrown James Worthy in there.
yeah,
I could have thrown Rick Barry in there.
yep.
Elgin Baylor, Dr. J. Yeah, but I mean,
I'm interested to see who you have because I feel like the small forward position is like there's so many guys who are. I feel like there's so many guys who played way before our time that it's hard to justify some of it. And then there's other guys who played before the time, be like, yeah, I can't not justify all of this stuff that I see going on with the accolades. If honestly, like the Celtics teams and all that stuff, it's so hard for me to justify a lot of it, unless there's one guy that played in that time period that I have on my list, not from this list, but in another one of our videos, our center list. He's going to pop up in there. Outside of that, I don't really have anyone else that I can justify for me personally. So I'm interested to see who you have going forward. My number 4 is Kawhi.
Yep.
Okay, so do you have Kawhi at your 4 as well?
Yep.
Okay, so Kawhi and KD once again, and Scottie Pippen graded really, really similar. And my other co-host, my cousin Drew does not like Kawhi at all. So what I did, instead of texting you, because obviously we don't know each other's lists, I text John and then I text Drew because I know John does not doesn't like Kevin Durant,
Yeah.
and I know my cousin Drew does not like Kawhi at all. So I was like, I want to see what both these guys say, and they said very similar things for the opposite. And I get it. You have guys who are potential locker room cancers who quit on teams. I understand, and they all have their individual accolades, right? Kawhi is going to be the defensive monster that he is. He's one of the greatest defenders of all time.
I
Talking
love
about
Kawhi.
2 Defensive Player of the Years, 7 All Defensive selections. He's a one-time steal leader, 1.7 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game. And we're talking about those things he has over KD are the defensive things. KD has all the scoring on top of him. I understand that. When it comes to playoff success, I discount all of KD's playoff success when it comes to the Warriors because I don't really care about it. But I prop up Kawhi Leonard when he was with Toronto because I'm like, that's impressive as hell. Like, that's one of the most impressive championships that we've had in the last decade.
He really got traded he switched with DeMar and then just showed DeMar, hey, look what you couldn't do.
Yep. Crazy disrespectful, but it's like, and it's just true. Like,
it absolutely was.
Yep. And
Granted,
so Kawhi took that team.
Granted, that Warriors team, we were hurt. Okay.
Yep.
If Klay doesn't tear his ACL, KD doesn't pop his Achilles, we win that one.
Mm-hmm. I guess.
No, we do. No, don't even. No.
I
agree.
If Zaza Pachulia doesn't go ahead and injure like every player from like every single year, like
Kawhi steps under in the corner three.
Maybe they beat the Warriors.
Gosh.
So.
But no, I agree. Me personally, I love watching Kawhi Leonard play basketball.
Yep. And again, that championship is what like kind of props me up a little bit forward ahead of KD personally, ahead of those other 2 guys behind him. The defensive stats, yes, he doesn't have all the scoring stats in the world. He was behind a lot of people, and he was a 6-man basically.
Yeah.
When he first is starting his career in San Antonio, yes, I understand the shit when it comes to San Antonio and him quitting on them and quitting on a lot of seasons, being injured, maybe not injured. Like, we're not really sure what was going on there. I totally understand it, and I totally understand him maybe not being the best locker room guy. I'm not going to the Clippers until Paul George does. And they get Paul George, and you get a landscaping changing NBA trade that we see today, and now a couple years later PG's gone and now Kawhi has to go ahead and lead his team. But I honestly still have way more faith in the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard than I do in the Phoenix Suns, who have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Like, I still have more faith in Kawhi and the Clippers than I do in Phoenix, like a million times over. So again, Kawhi's my 4. So you said Kawhi's also your 4, right? Yeah. So go ahead and lead it off with your 3 then, because I'm curious where you have your 3.
Larry Bird.
Wait, hold on. Okay, so Larry's all right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know who my 2 is, but anyways, Larry Bird. I never watched him. Obviously, I wasn't in that time period, but I think from what I've heard, Larry was a dog.
Mm-hmm.
From all the people that have shared their stories, and 3 titles, 2 Finals MVPs, 3 regular season MVPs, 9 first All NBA, 12 All Stars. That jumper was butter.
Yeah,
Larry was a bucket, and he had that sprinkle of flashy playmaking that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah,
and I love that.
Yeah, he averaged 6.3 assists per game as a small forward. It's only second to LeBron on this list.
I love that. So I do. Yeah, I put Larry Bird. So what do you got? What's your 3?
My three is going to make some people upset because it's going to be another one of those eye rolling ones. I sent this list off to the other co-host Drew, and I sent him this list, and he said, "Ugh, why?" And it's Dr. J. I put Dr. J at my three. Dr. J had my second highest rating out of any person on this list when it comes to the total point system and the number that spits out at. He got a 0.88, and just for reference, LeBron got a 0.129. So Dr. J won championship. He has 4 MVPs. He's a 12-time All NBA / All ABA selection. One-time All Defensive. He's never been a scoring leader or a assist leader, rebounding leader, steals leader, blocks leader. He's never been any of those, but he still averaged 24.2 points per game, 4.2 assists per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. And then this is where he leads the pack with everyone else is 2 steals and 1.7 blocks per game, which leads all of the other guys on this list, including Kawhi Leonard. The 1.7 blocks per game is more than the second. Is more by 0.6 blocks per game than the next highest person, which is Kevin Durant. He led the pack in field goal percentage with 50.6%, and then 3-pointers and 3-point percentage, all that stuff wasn't tracked at that time. So some of those guys lose a little bit of points because just a little bit too early for the time period. I just think when it comes to looking at the numbers alone, that's kind of what I base it off of. Obviously, you have the signature Dr. J moments, with his cradle, shit, insane stuff like that. You see the clips and you see the highlights. But when you look at the numbers for me, he graded out the second highest. I had to put him at 3. I couldn't discount him any more than the other guys that I've watched. And I'm like, that's 4 MVPs is a lot, man. Like that's a lot of MVPs regardless. So I put him there at my number 3 spot. Again, some people aren't going to like that. So your number 2 and your number 1, because we already know who.
We already know number 1. We already talked about number 2 as well. The best one-on-one bucket getter there is, Kevin Durant as my number 2. Purely, I could take away his 2 chips, and I still would love to put him at 2 just because I love watching him play.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a pure. I'll say it again. He's a pure bucket. One-on-one. He can give it to you anywhere. 3-point, mid-range to low post. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then the number 1 is obviously the one and only LeBron James.
Yep.
His resume speaks for itself. His resume speaks for itself. I don't think we need to talk too much about this.
Yep. Because there's not even an argument. There's not even someone who puts up a good fight with him. No. I think the Larry Bird versus Kevin Durant argument is a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Larry has more chips in him. He has more MVPs in him. He has 1 less All NBA selection than him. He has 3 more All Defensive selections than him. He's never been a scoring leader, while KD's been a 4-time scoring leader. But we already talked about that. Kevin Durant is a top 5 scorer of all time, right? That's just who he is. He has 3 less points per game than him, but Larry is a better playmaker, and he gets better steals than him. 6.3 assists per game to KD's 4.4. 10 rebounds per game compared to KD's 7. 1.7 steals per game compared to KD's 1.1. Now 0.8 blocks compared to KD's 1.1, so KD has the advantage there. KD has a better field goal percentage and a better 3-point percentage. We're talking about a difference of 0.5.
Yeah.
Between both of them. So not a lot. No. I just personally, I get it. The eyes are going to be doing the talking there. Absolutely. 100%. I just think that Larry has a more complete resume than KD does. And again, I discount those championships. So for me personally, it's like KD doesn't have any championships and Larry has 3. So I get it 100% because it's the eyes that do the talking 99% of the time. For me personally, though, I just can't. I can't put KD just because of my biases. And everyone could say that. And people in the comment section say, you're an idiot. You should have KD 2. KD's the greatest scorer of all time. Da, da, da. I don't care.
No, you'll get some of
Yeah.
that for sure.
Oh, I will, absolutely. I'm,
You know,
I'm banking on that to get to 100 subscribers, you guys. Hate on me and subscribe so we keep the ball rolling. That's what I'm banking on.
Me personally, I love getting bashed on the internet. So please.
Me personally, I'm a masochist. Tell me I'm horrible. Tell me I'm stupid.
Tell me how idiotic I am.
Yeah,
to put this
just
list
tell me
together.
I'm so dumb.
Please.
Absolutely.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So I get it. For me, KD's my 5, and people are not gonna like that sort of thing. Before we move on to the power forwards, do you have anything to cap off the small forwards?
Nobody's ever coming close to LeBron. So
No.
there's
Nope.
there's gonna be another Michael Jordan before we see another LeBron.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have his son in the NBA right now.
Yeah, arguably two of his sons.
We can go ahead and move on. This is the power forward list, and this is another one of those lists that was really close. And honestly, I had a really hard time with the next two categories, the power forwards and the centers. I had a hard time making this list.
Me too.
Now, my 1 for this list wasn't difficult. My 2, to 5 to honorable mention, honestly, was kind of hard to kind of sort out. I have some guys left off the list that people aren't going to like at all. But starting off with honorable mention, or guys that you wish you could put in the list but you could never really justify, who do you have?
Obviously, yeah, Dennis Rodman.
Yep, Dennis is one of my honorable mentions as well.
I think I would like to put in the round mound of rebound.
Okay.
Just because I never saw him play. I mean, I never saw, Kevin McHale, part of that 80s Celtics team. Great player. Great,
Yep.
resume. But, oh, and then that other guy, I can't justify putting him on this list. I didn't even put him on my top 5. I worked around him. I didn't.
Oh, no, he's not. No.
Dude, the NBA celebrated his birthday.
I
Like,
saw
what are you
that.
guys doing?
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't say his name around here. But no, he's not on my list. He didn't even get plucked out of guys I even check stats for. He's not going on my computer search history. I'm probably gonna get flagged from the FBI for even searching him. So I'm not even putting him on there, man. I have a couple of guys honorable mentions. I'm basically going to say everyone who was on my list that I looked up, because the list was that close. My lowest graded player on my list, and people aren't going to like this, Dirk was my lowest graded player on my list. I wish I could put him in my top 5. He's not there. Dennis Rodman is another guy who's honorable mention. Someone else I put in this list too, because I wanted to see how his numbers stacked up with everyone else. The boxing Rocky Balboa himself, Draymond Green. I put him up there. He actually stacked up nicely when it comes to other guys in his numbers. He didn't grade out the lowest. He graded out higher than Dirk. People can discount everything that he's done because of the punches he throw, and I don't like Draymond as much as the next guy. But guess what?
Dude.
You're talking about a 4-time champ, a 1-time DPOY, an 8-time All Defensive guy, a 2-time All NBA guy. So. We could say what we want to say, but the guy still had a significant impact on those teams. So,
I can say this confidently. He was the glue that held the Warriors together.
dude, he's the de facto, he's the glue guy in 2K. Okay,
Yep.
he's
Two-way glue guy.
Except
Except it's not two-way. He's a one-way glue guy.
Hey, to be fair, he does have the second highest 3-point percentage out of the guys on the power forward list, only behind Dirk. So,
He was a bucket before he hit the Warriors,
oh yeah.
even in his first few years.
Okay, so starting off at your number 5, who's your 5?
I had put Giannis
Okay.
very, very early, but I can't. Or see, that's where it gets hard because there's Anthony Davis too. I could throw him there, but I originally put Giannis.
Okay.
5 for now.
Okay.
Just I think he's not even in his 30s yet, so I think he has a long way to go.
I think Giannis might barely be 30.
But Yeah, we'll just stick with Giannis, I guess. Even though I can't stand him.
You can't stand him.
No, James Harden said it perfectly. I can run and dunk. Like if I was almost 7 feet tall and I just run and dunk, I would do that.
He's 29. He's 29 and 234 days old. Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
man, I'm gonna be in full disagreement with you because Giannis ranks higher on my list,
it's all right.
like a lot higher on my list.
It's all right. I just can't stand him. That's really it. I can't. I have these four other guys on here. I think I would rather play them.
Yeah, I get it. You mentioned my number five, and my number five is Anthony Davis.
Okay.
So AD's my five, and there's going to be guys out there who do not like that. Specifically, Drew, the other co-host, he does not like AD, not even in the slightest. Granted, he's a one-time championship. He's a five-time All-NBA. He's a five-time All-Defensive selection. He doesn't have a DPOY, but if we're being honest, the man puts up so many numbers that he probably should have been at least in selection for one of those stupid-ass Rudy Gobert DPOYs that is fucking ridiculous. He's a 3 times blocks leader. He leads all of the power forwards in 24.1 points per game. Some people forget that, before he was 80 on the Lakers, he was the Brow from the Pelicans, and the man was absolutely disgusting. 24.1 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, and then he's second in this group, 1.3 steals per game, and tops off the list at 2.3 blocks per game. Still third on the list for field goal percentage and three-point percentage at 52.3 and 29.7 three-point percentage and field goal percentage. It was kind of hard not to put him in there. I think the championship, whatever you want to say about the championship and the Mickey Mouse thing, or if you think it's no in between. Some people think it's the hardest NBA championship ever, or people think it's the easiest and it doesn't even count. It's like, okay, so we're not counting the guys who played in the 50s and 60s and they played against guys who were 5'1" and other guys were like 6'11". So let's fucking relax.
Yeah, see, I don't discount that championship at all.
I don't
because I heard somebody explain it. I think it was one of the NBA players. You
Yeah.
are living in your arena essentially.
Yep.
You don't have to hop on a plane. You don't have to travel anywhere. You go
Yep.
down to the hotel lobby, eat some damn breakfast, go to practice, go up to your room, take a nap,
Yep.
and you don't leave the facility.
Yep.
You are well rested every single day.
Yep.
I don't
Absolutely.
discount that championship at all. I think that was a very well earned chip. They fought for that. That was a great finals to watch. I love that finals. 2020, fantastic.
It's like there's no home court advantage. There's no playing on away. It's just everyone's fully rested, fully ready to go. It's like your best players against their best players, and whoever comes out on top, it's truly whoever's the best is the best.
Right.
Some guys took full advantage of it. Other guys couldn't take full advantage of it, and the Lakers did, and they won. At the end of the day, it's still guys playing in the NBA, guys still competing against each other. I don't know what would discount it so much to not count. So I'm not sure where the argument, the disconnect is there.
Those guys are the same ones that don't discount Kevin Durant.
Yep.
I would discount Kevin Durant before I discount the 2020 chip.
100%. And I think as we get further away from that stuff, further away from COVID, further away from the bubble, I think the appreciation will come at a later point in time. But we're talking about post LeBron retirement, post AD retirement. I think we're going to get closer to that on appreciation.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anytime soon. Not
No.
even close. Your number 4?
I had to go with Kevin Garnett.
Wow, you're 4. Okay. Now I don't know who's on the rest of your list. I thought maybe you and I would have the same one too.
I'm a mystery. We still
Okay.
might. I think we have the same number 1, but
We probably do. I'd hope so.
it's if yeah, I think Kevin Garnett. He's just a shit talker. He's
Yep.
he's a Draymond that came before Draymond,
Yep.
and he was the OG, and I think he was very dominant.
Yep.
Granted, he was put in Minnesota.
Yep.
9 All-NBA teams, 15 All-Stars, 1 DPOY, 9 first-team defensive teams.
Yep. 12 overall.
12, yeah, 12 overall. 18th in blocks all time,
Yep,
9 in
four-time rebounding
rebounds.
leader.
So I think, granted it's one title and only one MVP, but the one MVP is more than a lot of people have.
Yep,
I think he was very dominant.
absolutely.
I loved KG.
Yep. And I think we're talking about one of the greatest, I think, pure defenders of all time. I think his build of what we see um, is a little bit ahead of its time in terms of the taller, lankier type big man.
Yeah,
We see them now, right? We see guys like Wemby. We see
yeah,
guys being drafted right now, and like Alex Sarr, who's a power forward, right?
yeah.
We see guys who are tall and lanky and can move well. Kevin Garnett was that before those guys came about. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about a guy who could shoot, the three incredibly well, 27.5 3-point percentage, which isn't awful. It's not the bottom of the list. We're not talking about Tim Duncan. Um, but we're still talking about not consistent enough, right? But we're
Yeah.
still talking about a guy who is full force, averaging 17.8 points per game, and where am I at? 10 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.4 blocks. So I think his build and his type was a little bit ahead of time. I think guys don't really realize that, and they see Kevin Garnett now, and he's funny, and the stories are amazing, and the shit talking is awesome. My favorite clip of all time of KG is him getting real
Trash
close.
as.
No, I like him getting real close to the camera when he was on the show with with Stephen A. Smith, and he was like, Wilt Chamberlain will be rolling over in his grave if he knew a 7'4"
Oh.
Frenchman was nutmegging a guard. He was like a 6'10" power forward who's playing center, jumps this high off the ground. It's the best player in the league, and he gets up off his seat and he walks away.
Yeah, dude. I
KG's
love it.
awesome, and he's a great media personality. But before that, he's a dominant defensive player. He's a guy who's ahead of his time. He's a guy who's a prototype for guys that we see today, not as the best shooters, but I think if he grew up in the era that some of these guys are, he would have been a better 3-point percentage shooter because he would have worked on it growing up. I
Yeah.
think KG would have been an incredibly successful player today because he brings all of the things that you want to bring, and he wouldn't have played power forward. He would have played center
Yeah.
every single day of the night. Like that's what he would have played every single night because they don't care about the size as much in the NBA. Some of it, yes, obviously, when you're a monster at 7'4", like Wemby, you're gonna play center. But you know, he's still dominant. So for me, KG is a lot higher than you. I get it. He's your 4.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley is my 4. I know you said he's your honorable mention. I think Charles needs to get some love. He gets a lot of hate. Another guy who's a great media personality today, and everyone loves to see him and Shaq go back and forth. But before that, no championships. I get it. But also, he played with the Suns, and he had to go against guys like MJ. So, and he's doing that shit by himself. He's a one-time MVP, 11-time All-NBA selection, one-time rebounding leader, 22.1 points per game, 3.9 assists per game, which both of those rank third among the guys that I pulled off my list. He ranks second in rebounds per game at 11.7 on the guys on my list, 1.5 steals per game, which leads everybody on my list, zero point 0.8 blocks per game, also second in field goal percentage and 54.1, which is only a little bit less than Giannis. And then 26.6 3-point percentage as well. So for me, I think Charles deserves a lot more credit. The era that he ended up playing in just was not the era that he could thrive in, unfortunately. It's just he had to play against MJ, right? That's the unfortunate part of it, and some of these guys that we see today who play against LeBron in the Eastern Conference, they're never going to win a chip because they had to play against LeBron.
Yeah,
And
LeBroncho is a thing.
that's just part of it, right? I mean, guys who played on the Bulls, guys who played for the Celtics, before the Celtics won this year. But he's also in the West. So, like LeBron's in the West now, and finally Boston can go ahead and they can push up. And these guys aren't going to win because of certain greatest players of all time. And
Yeah.
Charles is one of the unfortunate parts of it. John Stockton, we mentioned in the first part of the podcast. He's one of those unfortunate souls that just could not ever get past, playing against MJ. And Charles is one of those guys too. So
I mean,
To me, I think
there's more
Charles deserves
examples.
that
Yeah,
fourth spot.
no, for sure. I think Charles definitely does not get love.
Yeah.
Um, I think they kind of overlook him now and see him more of the TV personality comedian type.
Oh yeah, and they always clown him. You don't have any chips. Da, da,
Talking
da.
about championships. Yep.
Totally get it. He's the only guy on this power forward list that doesn't have a chip.
Yeah.
All the rest of the guys on my list have a chip. Even on the honorable mentions, they have a chip. He's the only one.
Yeah.
But none of those other guys had to play against MJ. It's a big difference there.
Yeah.
So, and Anthony Davis played with LeBron.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So-
it's like Westbrook or Harden. They never got further than Steph Curry would allow them to.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Yep. For sure. Who's your three?
I'm curious to see if this guy is on your list. I wouldn't be surprised if he is.
He's probably not.
Who do you think it is?
No, I'm just saying it's probably not because every single guy that's on the list has already been mentioned by you. Like we've already mentioned the rest of my guys.
Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol
No,
is
no,
entered the number.
Pal's not on my list. I didn't even pull up anything for him. To be fair, go
That's
ahead,
right.
make the case for Pal because I didn't even take the time or the respect for Pal to even pull up his numbers and put them in the spreadsheet.
It's just a simple fact that we're showing love to our European brothers. All right, 2 titles, obviously with Kobe, 4
Yeah.
All NBA, 6 All Stars. I think he was just a very all around, well constructed big man. I think he did it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think him being traded with his brother really kind of helped that.
Absolutely nuts, by the way.
I don't think Marc Gasol would have gotten it done. I think Pau is the more agile, well-rounded player.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Pau got his too. But no, I like Pau. He's a very, very solid all-around passing, shooting, rebounding big man. He was a hustler.
Yeah.
He was an absolute hustler. So that's my 3. Who do you got?
My 3 is a guy you've already mentioned before, and he's the surprise spot. And I'm saying you already said, oh, he's already at this point. I think he's already higher than where you even place him.
Giannis.
Giannis is my 3.
right.
Some people will really dislike that, not for the fact that it's just Giannis. Some people are going to really hate that fact because people are like, they romanticize the Brooklyn Nets, KD, Kyrie. Oh, they should have won. They should have won that series. Like, they romanticize that like so
What if
much.
his fat ass foot wasn't on the line and he was a
Yeah, like-
3-pointer?
Like if you didn't wear like size 400, shoes, then maybe you would have. You didn't have clown shoes, maybe you would have actually made it, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And like, why aren't we crediting Giannis for beating this super team?
Yeah.
Instead, we want to romanticize. Oh, they should have won it. They should have got a chip, and
Yeah.
they're all like depressed about it. It's like, why the fuck are we romanticizing like? 3 of the biggest like locker room cancers on the fucking planet.
Yeah.
Like why like and I get it. Like Kyrie's good now. Like he has a place actually for himself in the NBA.
Yeah.
But like we're acting like he didn't kind of push himself out of Cleveland because he wanted to be the one. We're acting like he didn't push himself out of Boston because he's a punk ass hoe. Like we're acting like he didn't like push himself out of Brooklyn because of his, religious or political views. Like we're
Yeah.
acting like he didn't push himself out of every single one of these places.
Yeah.
Like, we're acting like he doesn't still believe the world is flat. Like, this is world be flat Kyrie Irving. Like, this is insane. Like, we're not acting like James Harden is one of the biggest locker room cancers on the planet. You wanted these 3 locker room cancers to win? That's crazy to me. You're not voted, like, you're not inspired by the guy he comes from nothing, and he comes in and he actually wins in the NBA, and he actually develops himself to be a talent and to be a top 3 player right now, a top 3, in my opinion, power forward of all time. People hate success stories when it's too successful. They love the success stories at first. They're like, oh my gosh, good for him. He won an MVP.
But
Actually,
then when he
he's won 2
beats your
MVPs.
favorite team, you're like, oh, fuck that.
It's like, oh, that's ridiculous. He's
Yeah.
a 1-time champ, 2-time MVP, a 1-time DPOY, 8-time All-NBA. Right now, he still has a lot of years left to go ahead and kick up that list. The guys ahead of him, Charles Barkley with 11, easily can catch him. He's going to pass Kevin. He's going to tie Kevin Garnett this next year as long as he stays healthy. Dirk is 12 time, and he's probably going to get up to that point as well. I don't know if he's going to get to the 15 time level because I don't know if his game lets him play to that point that long. But 5-time all defensive selection. He's 23.4 points per game, 4.9 assists per game, 9.8 rebounds per game, 1.1 steals, 1.2 blocks. Leads the entire group in field goal percentage in 54.5. I just think that, yes, I know he's 7 foot tall and he can run and dunk and that's all he could do, but it's like that's a lot of what only LeBron could do at the beginning of his career. And it's so unstoppable. And he still shoots 28.6% from the three. Obviously, you want that to be more consistent, but he's a power forward. And he's still more consistent than some of these all-time guys. More consistent than Tim Duncan. More consistent than Kevin Garnett. More consistent than Charles Barkley, Dennis Rodman. The only guys who really beat him are AD and Draymond, who are guys who play today, but they play a different role. Yeah. So, to me, Giannis, he's the leader of his team, and that's what I think you have to be for getting into the top 3, right? Tim Duncan, leader of his team. Right, Dirk didn't make the list, leader of the team, but the numbers just did not suffice to actually get him there, in my opinion. I couldn't justify making up some of these numbers. Again, Dirk graded out the lowest for me on my list, so I just couldn't make up that much. Dennis Rodman, never a leader on his team. Anthony Davis, a leader on his team for a certain period of time, but since he's not a leader on his team, or a couple of years he wasn't a leader on his team, he is once again now, but Draymond Green, never a leader on his team. Giannis is the de facto best player on his team, not even close. I mean, we're looking at a Giannis who could probably win MVP again next year. And maybe the next year after that. He's still good enough to do that.
Revenge season.
I think there's a lot of fatigue on Giannis and how good he is. And I think we forget because how bad the Bucks were last year. Giannis is a top 3 power forward already up to this point. I don't think it's really even all that close to me.
Yeah.
Who's your 3? Go ahead.
I already told you.
Oh, yeah, okay. So who's
your 2?
Then?
No. We're going your 2 because you just said my number 2 wasn't there.
KG. KG's my 2.
Yeah.
So we already kind of went over KG and we went over why he's there. I went over why I think he should be higher and why he is higher on my list, being a prototype for the power forward position and defensively and all that stuff. I already went over my 2. So go ahead and go over your 2 because I think that's what's interesting. If I don't even have him on my list,
it's Dirk.
Okay, yeah,
it's Dirk. I can't. All these other guys that you mentioned, I can't discredit how the team that he took down.
Yeah,
to
for sure.
Get to that point where he's at. The hardest path to the finals, I think, to this day.
Okay.
And I could be forgetting some finals runs. And once again, we're showing love to our European brothers. But I can't. Dirk was phenomenal. I think Dirk was also, like you said about KG, I think he was ahead of his time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, you look now at the 7-footers, Cat, you got Wemby out there shooting threes, you got all these 7-footers that are, not relying on it, but are more comfortable shooting that 3 ball. Yep. Obviously, the post game has been a lost art for a while now.
Yeah, so he's he's like the tail end of the post game.
Right.
He's the very last person to utilize it to the fullest extent that it has been utilized.
Yes. I mean, obviously, I think he passed some of that off to Luka. Sidebar, fuck Luka.
Yep. They're not gonna like that one.
I don't give a shit. You internet thugs.
Subscribe, dude. Hey, we like being hated on. Go to subscribe.
You internet thugs can suck my nuts, dog. I swear. All the kids. Okay, I meant to say this last time. All the kids that say you don't know ball, they only focus on he has a bag. He only focus offensively. It don't matter. You guys, seriously, you're one-sided because they look at Kyrie Irving and say, oh, what dribble moves can he do? Oh, my gosh. Oh, how can I cross this guy up? Get out of here with that shit. Anyways, Dirk, number 2. One of the hardest chips of the past decade.
Yep. And I think our number one isn't even really close when you're talking about a 5-time champ, a 2-time MVP, a 15 All NBA, and all defensive selection.
My God.
We're talking about 19 points per game, 3 assists, 10.8 rebounds per game, zero point 0.7 steals per game, 2 blocks a game, high field goal percentage, and then, not the highest 3-point
Mr.
percentage.
Fundamental himself, the greatest power forward of all time. Oh, I love this guy.
Yeah, old heads are gonna love Timmy D. But he's not the most exciting guy to watch at the end of the day. He's really not. But you don't win 5 chips. Be the centerpiece of that team. You're the best player on that team, bar none. And you still win 2 MVPs off of it. He's not exciting to watch. But at the end of the day, you don't have to do the exciting things. If you had to do the exciting things every single time, other guys would have won MVP. Other guys would have won champs.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And, he's not just he's not a prototype of coaching. This is who Tim Duncan is.
Yeah.
He's fundamental, but he's also get to the basket, and he's gonna put every move on you that he can. He's gonna
work your ass in the post for sure.
He's gonna dissect you. And that's not the most exciting thing. It's like MMA fans, right? With the original MMA fans who watched MMA before even UFC 100, they appreciated a lot of the ground game and the dissecting of that. But a lot of guys don't like guys like Khabib, right? Who was obviously retired, but a lot of Islam and all those guys, they don't like those guys because they're all ground game. They're fundamental.
Everybody wants a first round knockout.
Right, that's what they like. They like the knockout stuff, right? I get it. I miss John Jones as much as the next guy, but let's relax. John Jones is also one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in his weight class. So
right.
Tim Duncan is in that same thing. Tim Duncan doesn't do the most exciting things on the planet, but he's still the best in his weight class at the power forward position. I don't even think it's really that much of a discussion.
No, it's not. It's a very large gap between 1 and 2. No matter who even you put here, if you put Karl Malone. If you put, anybody, you can put any other power forward in that 2 spot, and it's seriously, the gap is not close at all.
Yep.
I did not just cut that from the video. Cut it. Fuck.
I think Tim Duncan's he's in the same reign as you put it's not a discussion for MJ, it's not a discussion for LeBron, it's not a discussion with Tim Duncan. If you go look at our point guard video, you'll go see who we put at 1. And there's a discussion for 1 and 2, but between the shooting guards, small forwards, and power forwards, I don't think there's a discussion. Even if we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the centers next, there's a discussion for 1, but for those 3 in the middle, there's not a discussion for those guys, and it's really not anything to debate about. So honestly, at this point, we could just go ahead and move on to the center position. So looking at our centers, a lot of really good centers, and this one was so difficult to me. I had a preconceived notion going on who would I put 1, and my number 1 guy ended up at 4. And I'm like, damn, that's crazy, because I think he's a lot better than 4, but I don't know if I can discount some of the stuff. My 4, my 3 could flip, but I don't know, man. It's a little tough. So looking at it real quick, once again, clipping these up. If you're watching the podcast, you're listening to the full podcast, you're hearing me repeat myself. If you're just watching the clip on YouTube, how I grade things is I use my eyes first. If I've watched you play, if I've seen your games very frequently, that's my number 1 grader. After that, it's stats, right? It's accolades. The accolades are looking at stuff like champs, so championships, MVPs, DPOYs, All NBA, All Defensive, and stuff past that. How many times you've been a scoring leader, assist leader, your points per game for your career. That's the stuff I look at. I put it into a spreadsheet. It spits out a number for me. That's the number that I use to grade some of these guys. Now, if one guy is rated a little bit higher than the other guy, I might flip him if it's really close because I like the other guy a little bit more, or because I've watched the other guy more. That's what I'm going to go ahead and put on my list. So getting into the centers, who is your honorable mentions, if you have any, or who's someone that you wish you could put on this list, but you just couldn't quite justify it?
You know, I don't really have anybody that I couldn't. I'll have to flip one thing, but honorable mentions. I got a few of those. Obviously, Orlando Dwight Howard was probably one of the most exciting players. I think big men at least
Yep.
that we've seen for a while. I'm very, I'm a little upset he didn't get put on that top 75.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, honorable mention. I did not put Nikola Jokic top five.
Okay.
I think he will be there very soon.
Yeah.
Um, and then Patrick Ewing,
Mm.
legendary Knicks player,
Yep.
didn't unfortunately get to that point that we all had hoped for. And then one more, I think Moses Malone.
Yeah.
I think he's there, but I think that's about it. I didn't.
I have a couple of honorable mentions. I discount the shit out of anyone who played in the 50s and 60s because I don't give a
Yes,
fuck about you.
yes,
Bill Russell's on my honorable mentions.
Yep.
And I get it, the 11 championships and da-da-da. Like, and I'm a Celtics fan. Let's back it up. Let's fucking relax, okay? But he's 6'9" and he played center.
Yeah,
Your game is not translatable. There's a guy who also played way back in the 60s and 70s on my list as well, and I'm sure you can guess who it is. But the motherfucker was 7'1". It's a little bit different because your game is translatable. Would you be as dominant? Maybe not. But your game is at least transferable to the 70s, 80s, 90s. You can transfer it a little bit.
yeah.
Bill's one of those guys who I just don't think you can transfer him that much. And you can go ahead and you look at me and you can argue with your mom. I don't really give a fuck. Like the other guys who didn't quite make my list, I wish they could have. David Robinson just missed my list, and I could maybe flip him in my number 5. It's really, really close, but I think my number 5 is already at his point where he is. And then one more guy who I think was really close on my list was also Moses Malone, as you mentioned already. So those guys, so David Robinson, Moses Malone, Bill Russell, those guys are, were really close, and I wish I could have put them on there. But I think my number 5 just slightly beat him out, and I think that he's going to stay at that spot. I don't think he's going to climb any higher. I think to me, those top 4, to me, the top 4 centers of all time are like super set in stone. I don't know how it's going to be very difficult to ever kind of penetrate that unless you're Wemby and you just absolutely dominant for the next 12, 13 years, then you can. But go ahead. Who's your number 5?
Steen, you said your top 4 was okay.
I think
Honestly,
I think
it
my
was
top
so
4.
hard.
Yeah, I think my top 4 solidified like all time. It's gonna be hard. I think like looking at the centers today, you have like Wemby, who's like gonna be the next guy who could do it, but
Who
Wemby's
has
supposed to
the
be also
best chance? Yes.
yeah. And I think, but it's hard. Past that, you look at all the centers in the league, it's not even close.
Um. Yeah, dude. Honestly, this was the hardest one.
Easily.
I would honestly, and I could be forgetting. I could be forgetting players. Let me just claim that right now. I got my number 5 as Mount Dikembe.
Wow. Okay.
Just for his dominance on that defensive end. I know he didn't get the MVPs or the chips, but he's got 4 depoys,
Yeah. Right.
8 All Stars, 2 All NBAs, 6 All Defensive team selections,
Yep.
second in blocks.
Yep.
Mount Mutombo himself.
Yep.
Um, iconic. No, iconic. But like I said, I could be forgetting people.
Yeah.
Please, like I said earlier, degrade me in the comments. I love that. So let me know. Who am I forgetting? Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is a guy I said that is already at this point, and it's Jokic. So Jokic did crack my top 5.
Okay.
I
get it. I do.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that regardless of how you feel about this MVP, he would have won either last year's MVP
He
or
should
this
have won
year's
last
MVP.
year's.
Like, he should have won last year's, and Joel should have won this year's. But Joel was hurt, and he didn't qualify for it. But if you would have taken away the whole rule about the games being played or whatever, like, he would have ended up
Yeah.
he would have ended up winning it. So you're still looking at a one-time champ is still a very competitive Nuggets team, but unfortunately you're looking at a very competitive Western Conference who's very, very young. 3-time MVP, 6-time All-NBA player, 29 points per game. And I get it. He hasn't had like the stretch that some of these guys have had. Like looking at the All NBA selections alone, Shaq, Kareem, Hakeem, those guys are in the double digits. Wilt, Bill, like David Robinson, these guys in the double digits of All NBA selections. But the dominance that Nikola Jokic has gone on inside of his 6 years is dominant. Is one of the most dominant periods that anyone has gone through. And he's another one of those guys who isn't super duper exciting to watch because he's slow moving, but it's just like, oh, I have 0.2 seconds left on the clock. Oh, I have to throw it up.
Yeah,
I'm 40 feet beyond the arc. Like, let me throw it up, and I'm still gonna make it. Like
that, and he's so unpredictable.
Yep.
You have no idea what that man is going to do next.
No, and it's ridiculous. 6.9 assists per game, 10.7 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals per game, 35% 3-point percentage, which is the most, like, it's the highest. It's not even really close. Hakeem is the next closest at 20.2, and that's second place. So they're talking about 15% difference between first and second for 3-point percentage. Obviously a different time, but still, to me, Jokic is at the 5 already. I don't think he can climb any higher at this point. I don't think Jokic is going to play super duper long. I think he has a couple more years to go, and I think he's going to be done. I don't think he wants to play ball a super long time. Again, no. I think past this, like, Wemby has a good shot if he plays really consistently a long time. Wemby has a good shot to hit that 5 spot. And then he also has a good shot to start cracking the 4-3-2-1. Honestly, it's really hard even to do that, you know?
Oh, yeah. I think this small forward, I think obviously LeBron's solidified, but then I think these probably top 3 spots are the hardest to reach.
Yep, absolutely. So looking at your 4, again, my 4 and my 3 could probably be switched. I'm interested to see where you have some of these guys. Who's your 4?
You mentioned him already. David Robinson.
Okay.
I got the big D-Rob on here. 2 titles, 1 MVP. He's got 8 all defensive selections, defensive player, 10 All-Stars, 6 in blocks. OBAs. Dude, he's just the most defined man I think I've ever seen in my life. I swear. I didn't know that was an NBA player. I thought that was a male model. He even played with Tim Duncan. I mean, I think he was around. I think he was around a long time.
Yeah, he was around for a while. Him, Bill Russell, and Jokic graded out so close to each other that they were like very definite. Like, okay, honorable mention, 5th spot, and who gets it. But I've watched Jokic. I watched him play, and I'm like, hey, I've watched how dominant this guy is, and we've seen stuff where, like, I can show my dad, who doesn't watch a lot of basketball, and he watched basketball since, like, the 80s and 90s. So some of these guys that are on here, he's watched these guys. But I show him Jokic highlights, or, like, we're sitting down, and he watched a couple of the Nuggets and the Timberwolves games in the playoffs, and he's like, he can do that too? He can do that too? What the fuck can he not do? I was like, I don't know, jump higher than like this much. Like that's pretty much it.
Honestly,
so, like,
dude, he even had a few dunks in that series that were very surprising.
Athletic, yeah.
He's a sneaky athletic guy.
So I get him at 4, David, but I'm like, man,
I'm not.
He has the numbers, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, he does. He absolutely does. I mean, 21.1, 10.6 rebounds.
Yeah.
Only 2.5 assists, but what else do you expect?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then you also said you discredit. I'm gonna bring this back real quick. You said you discredit, the 50s, 60s. So Bill Russell.
Absolutely.
I have slowly started to discredit Wilt Chamberlain.
Okay.
Because I mean, the same thing with the Michael Jordan, the stats, and all this other stuff, and they're still they came out with a boxing match in full color that Wilt Chamberlain was in, but they can't show us a proof of his 100-point game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're lying.
No, Kobe owns that record at 81. That's for
sure.
You're
lying to me.
Yeah, no, for sure.
If you're putting out videos like that, but you can't show us.
Yep.
And they're claiming that it's only radio or audio. I'm like, no. See, that makes it even worse. So Wilt Chamberlain did not make my list. I will say that right now.
Okay, and I'll say Wilt Chamberlain is my 4.
Okay.
So Wilt's my 4, 2-time champ, 4-time MVP, 10-time All-NBA. Now the rest of it we can discount for sure. He's 7'1", playing with a bunch of guys who were not even close to that. But that's where I kind of like have the tough time. Like, I'm not going to bring up 30.1 points per game, 22.9 rebounds per game. It's like that's not even realistic. Like that's not
I
translatable.
saw
Like,
a graphic that said the MVP voting.
yeah,
And back then, Bill Russell was first. He had like 12 or 13 points with like 23 rebounds.
yeah.
And then he was right underneath it with 50 points, 20 something
Yeah.
rebounds a game. I'm like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. He's 7'1", so I feel like the game could be translatable for him if we pluck him out
Absolutely.
of that era and push him a little bit forward to like the 80s.
Yeah.
If we put him there, I think he's not as dominant, but I still think he's probably a 20 points per game, 10 rebounds, 13, 14 rebounds per
Yeah.
game type player.
I mean, throw him in the Showtime Lakers, yeah, for sure.
I think he's still that player. So I think that's why he still cracked my 4.
Yeah.
And honestly, my 3 and my 4 were super close in terms of, but I had to discount. Like Wilt scored out at a 1.05.
Yeah.
My next guy scored out at a 0.52. But I'm discounting like 30 points per game and 22.9 rebounds per game. Like it's just the era. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. Like that's ridiculous.
For
The
sure.
rest of these guys are like outside of Bill and Wilt. 10.9, 11.2, 11.1, 10 point, like realistic shit.
Really,
Like, we're
yeah,
not talking about
realistic numbers.
insane shit.
Yeah.
So
2K numbers.
right, exactly. Who's your number 3?
Sorry, I cut out. What'd you say?
Who's your number 3?
Got it. Okay. Number 3. This could. I'm curious to where this is going to match up with yours. I put Hakeem.
Hakeem's on my list. He's
Okay.
not my 3.
I put Hakeem. Obviously, this is one of the players along with Charles. Unfortunately, had to play against Michael Jordan. Um, but the 2 years that he left, he won.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The 2 titles, 2 Finals MVPs. He's got a 1 regular MVP, 6 All NBAs, first team, 2 depoys, 5 All NBA first teams.
Yep.
So I think he was just first in blocks. I mean, he's the block leader.
Yep.
Fantastic, solid. You couldn't get around him on defense. Don't even try it, type of thing.
Like the dream shake is a thing, right?
That
I mean,
he made that.
The post game work really developed from, in my mind, got perfected from Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah.
Like you have guys before that who are great centers and power forwards who have they don't have like the game like Hakeem did. Like that type of footwork, being that nimble and that big, was not something that was a regularity. Like it's a regularity now, right? Being that big and being nimble like that is a regularity now.
Yeah, but
Like,
you
Hakeem
didn't see
was
Kareem out
never-
there
No.
doing what he did. No.
No, it's a little bit different. Like Kareem did some stuff where like the skyhook was insane, but he's so big you can't stop it. And he was so good at it you can't stop it. But Hakeem, I think, is a guy who could be plucked up and put into today's NBA because of how shifty he has been. And outside of Nikola Jokic of 3-point percentage being 35%, Hakeem still shot 20%. Yes, not the most consistent thing, but he's also a center.
Yeah.
Hakeem's higher than 3 for me. So, I won't go too far, but I will say that I give Hakeem a lot of credit for being kind of a forgotten player, it feels like, in the 90s, for how good he was. And a lot of guys, don't.
The Jordan era.
Exactly. They don't remember him, But, yeah, so Hakeem's higher for me.
So
and I get it.
number 3, I'm gonna guess you put. I'm gonna say Shaq.
Yeah, so Shaq
Okay.
was the disappointing one for me.
Okay.
Shaq graded out lower than a lot of these guys, and I'm like, bro, like Shaq is like the most dominant player like of all time in my mind. From what I've watched, right? He's a 4-time champ. He's a 1-time MVP, 14-time All NBA, 3-time All Defensive, 2-time scoring leader.
Yeah.
23.7 points per game, 10.9 rebounds, 0.6 steals, 2.3 blocks. 58.2 field goal percentage, which is the highest out of anybody on the list. Point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, centers. And then, hey, dude, if you want to throw this in, 4.5 3-point percentage, absolutely elite. 1-3 in his career.
That
That's
sounds
crazy.
like a block stat for him.
So, some of the stuff that he did in some of his finals appearances is nuts. He was the best player on this team. Yes, I know he had Kobe, but he was the very de facto best player on his team on the Lakers. And man, this is a little bit disappointing. I wanted to play him 3, but the numbers popped out a lot lower than 3, and I'm like, damn. I wanted to play him 1. Like, that's why I wanted Shaq from it, and Shaq just didn't pop that out. So he's my 3, and I'll spoiler alert, Hakeem's my 2.
We switched. Our 2s and 3s are switched.
Okay, so we have the same one. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to put Shaq 1. Like, Shaq was like my de facto 1 for a long time. And then I started pulling up all the Kareem stuff, and I'm like, God damn it, dude. I'm like, this isn't even close.
I couldn't put
justify
Shaq
it.
1.
I couldn't justify it. I wanted to so bad justify it. So basically what we have is our 1, 2, 3 is Kareem, either Hakeem or Shaq. And then flip-flopping those 2s and 3s for us.
4 and 5 are kind of whatever you want. The top 3 undisputed, nobody's touching that.
I don't think so. And again, the guys who could maybe make a case, and today's NBA is really only Wemby. I don't see another center coming out or who's in the league today that can make a case. Because guess what? The centers today, they don't play very long. That they're injured a lot.
Yeah.
So
Dwight Howard's already out. I mean, he's playing in China.
Yeah.
I mean,
you get dominant years, but then you're done after that.
Yeah.
You get injured, or somehow your game just falls off. It just doesn't last very long.
DeAndre Jordan. Oh, that one hurt my heart. DeAndre Jordan was solid. I loved him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. 6 titles, 2 MVPs, 6 MVPs, 2 Finals MVPs. Sorry. 5 All First Team defensive. Fucking hell, man! Like, you can't. The skyhook. The Showtime Lakers. That was just an unbeatable lineup. 2nd in scoring, 3rd rebounds and blocks. That's an unreal feat as it is.
Yep.
For you playing 30-something years ago, and you're still 2nd in scoring, 3rd in rebounds and blocks. That's how dominant you were, that your record is still in the top 3.
Yep. Like you said, the six chips and 6 MVPs. 15-time All-NBA. We've seen some of these guys who are just as high, LeBron's 20, but, Tim Duncan's at 15. He's at 15. 11-time All-Defensive selection. 2-time scoring leader. It's impressive as a center, you take away Wilt's, scoring leader stuff, because I don't really count it that much. It's him and Shaq for, the scoring leader stuff. He's been a rebounding leader. He's a 4-time blocks leader. 24.6 points per game, which is the most if you discount all of Wilt's stuff.
Yeah.
You're looking at 11.2 rebounds per game, which is the second most outside of Moses Malone, and then you discount, once again, Wilt and Bill Russell's stuff as well. 2.6 blocks per game. So, it's so hard. I wanted to put Shaq number 1. I wanted to put Kareem 2, and then Hakeem at 3. But it just, looking at the numbers, popping them out, seeing what I see, I'm just like, I can't. Kareem's the de facto 1, and I wish I could have had it different. But, it's crazy looking at the Lakers stuff. Kareem, Wilt, Shaq, it's insane the amount of talent that's come out of the Lakers. It's stupid.
They've had some dogs in there. Kobe, now LeBron.
Yep, exactly. And then you look at AD is in my top 5. Yeah, man. Obviously, Magic as well. So, but that's capping off our list. I mean, we're an hour and 53 minutes in. I was going to be happy if we just went 53 minutes into the podcast, but we went an hour and 53 minutes in. Anything else to top it off before we sign off?
No, man. I think I'm not really surprised that our lists weren't besides the 4 and 5, they were very, very close.
Yeah.
And that didn't necessarily surprise me.
Right.
Cut the part out where I said his name.
Right.
I apologize if I trigger anybody. But no, man, I think I was good. Honestly, I just shut under 2 hours is great.
Yep.
I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So basketball is not going to start up again for another, what, we have 3 months until the
Yeah.
NBA actually starts up. So let's see. NBA start date is going to be, if I can get it up, October 22nd. Yeah, so 3 months. So I was pretty much right. So 3 months until we really get any more NBA stuff going. So really until then, it's been fun, but we're gonna go and sign off. Drew will be back next week, and we're gonna go ahead and talk about training camp for the NFL. Some of the holdouts that we have going on there, especially for the Cowboys and the Niners, that have a lot of holdouts going on that we got a lot of questions about. So, Jordan, signing off.
Thank you again.
See ya.